welcome to another episode of Grow For It. Today we have a very special guest, Marlo Lyons, who's a certified executive and career coach. She's been running her coaching business for just shy of 10 years, coming up on 10 years now. So Marlo, I'm sure you've got a lot of great wisdom to share with us today. Thank you for joining us.
Well, thanks for having me, Nathan. It's great to be here.
Absolutely. I saw that you went to law school and you had an interesting past that didn't just include coaching. Can you tell me a little bit about how you got passionate about coaching and discovered that passion or talent of yours?
Yeah, it's a super crazy story. I actually was a TV news reporter for about 12 years, and then I became an entertainment lawyer. And then after about 12 years of that, I had enough. And so I was looking for a new career, and I decided to go into HR business partner. But every job description that I saw that was really interesting to me had the word coach at the beginning of each sentence. So I was like, God, coach, I know I'm doing that in my job, but how do I prove that? And so I thought I would go and get certified in coaching to be this HR business partner role. And I fell in love with it. I just loved coaching. I went to CTI Coactive. I call it the Harvard of coaching. And I loved everything about it. And I used it immediately when I moved into an HR business partner role. I moved over to Roku and I was coaching 5 C-suite leaders from the second I got there. So it was pretty amazing to have that background and also have the business background because I was a VP at Viacom, which is now Paramount now. So I had the business background. Now I was in HR. So adding those two backgrounds together and then having this coaching certification just put it all together for me. And I was coaching the head of advertising, head of players, the CFO, the CMO, and the general counsel. And I love everything about coaching, executive coaching. And I've been doing it, like you said, for about 10 years, if not a little bit more.
That's fantastic. So then was it a big jump for you going from working for Roku to starting your own company?
Yeah, so I went from Roku and then I moved to Intuitive Surgical. That was a huge jump for sure, because I went from entertainment at Viacom to entertainment tech, Roku to med tech. So talk about changes, right? And then I jumped into my own company about 2 years ago. So Intuitive was calling people back to the office and I had moved states during COVID. So I knew that, and I knew when I moved that was a possibility. And so I trained my replacement and I decided to make the big leap and jump out on my own. But I had a side hustle for over a decade at that point doing career coaching. So I was doing executive coaching and team coaching internally, and I'm certified in team coaching as well. And then I was doing career coaching as a side hustle for about a decade. And so I was ready to make the leap and had built up basically a side business, which I think is really important for people that are going to make that leap, is to make sure that you have some sort of clientele and or referrals and or, some way to build up your business before just making the leap and going from a salaried position to nothing.
Yeah, that's great. That's a really good transition for you. So it wasn't 0 to 100 immediately jumping into the unknown, if you will. You already kind of had a good feel of what it was like to run your own business.
I did. Yeah. Because like I said, I was running a side hustle for a long time. And I had clients, right? So I already had a 6-figure side hustle on the side. And so I can admit that now out loud. But, I didn't want to admit that when I was working for a company, but I was mainly coaching on nights and weekends. And then by the time I leaped, into my own business, I already had all the platforms that I use and the systems down and things like that. It was just a matter of, expanding my business a little bit further.
Wow, that's fantastic. Congratulations. It's very cool to see how it's grown. What would you say so far has been your proudest moment in running your coaching business?
I just love watching people thrive. I think that's what coaching is all about. You're helping somebody be the best person they can be in any aspect of their life, whether it's at work or at home or with their kids. And in my case, I don't do life coaching, but life coaching does come into executive coaching often. Something happens at home with a spouse or with their child or something like that. But I just think for me, just watching people grow, watching them learn, watching them realize, how they need to be, who they want to be, and really just taking that time. Nathan, people don't pause. They're gunning 100 miles an hour in the corporate workspace, and they don't pause to think about, okay, who am I in all of this? And where do I fit in? And what do I get out of this? And so they take that 1 hour a week where they have time to actually think And that's just amazing for me to watch the growth.
That's great. So then what would you say, I guess you do a few different types of coaching at this point. You do team coaching, you do executive coaching and career coaching, if I saw correctly.
I do.
So then how do you, I guess, where do you find that line of personal life coaching versus executive coaching, or even any of the other types of coaching that you do, where do you see that line kind of distinguishes itself? Because I feel like they go together to an extent, but how do you focus on one and not the other?
Yeah, so it's really up to the client, right? And it's what they need. So when a corporation hires me to do executive coaching, it's usually to help somebody be a better communicator or help them advance or have more, in their words, have more confidence. It's usually not confidence. It's usually just how they're showing up and showing up a little bit different and understanding how they're being perceived, right? And I don't do a ton of remedial coaching where somebody is like on a PIP and needs to be, saved. I do a ton of advancement coaching. Somebody's a very high performer and they're, in the succession plan. So, hey, let's get them even further along in their journey. And then, in team coaching is usually people who hate each other because they've had miscommunications or misunderstandings or misapprehensions or just, a ton of just angst between them is the best way I can describe it. So that usually will bring out some personal things. Sometimes you get the personal in that because something's going on personally and nobody else knows until you're in that safe space in that room. And then it comes out. And then on career coaching, most people don't think about what they want. They think about what they're supposed to do, what somebody told them they're good at, what their strengths are, and how do I leverage those? But they don't actually stop and say, what do I want? What do I need? Where will I be fulfilled? And so there's that personal aspect in that as well. I think most of the coaching that I do, though, is more on that career advancement, that executive space. You'll find a little bit of life coaching in there because you are really tapping into people to say, what is it that you want? And that's a really hard question for a lot of people to answer. But when we get to that answer, it's glorious because then they know how to align everything that they are doing around their values of what they want.
That's great. And I know you've done a lot of high level executive coaching. What do you think that community typically needs, which is different from your average employee?
Yeah, so I think it's really interesting. The higher you go, the quieter it gets, meaning you don't get development because they assume you know how to do your job. You don't have the sounding board because you are always posturing in front of everybody else, right? When you're in the C-suite, you have to know what you're doing. You have to show up a certain way and you're posturing all day long in certain ways. So you can't ask what they might consider to be a stupid or a silly question or how do I go about doing this or how do I manage this situation? And they have nobody to ask. So talking to a coach helps them work through, feeling comfortable with the decisions that they're making, to the conversations that they're going to be having, how to work with their CEO and make sure that their CEO is apprised, make sure they're speaking in executive language so that they're seen as the executive that they were hired to be. So I think for executive coaching, it's not confidence. Almost all of my leaders have confidence. That's not it. It's really about how to show that confidence in a way that it can be received by others. And to also be confident in a way in the decisions that you're making that are the right decisions, leaning into that intuition, leaning into what you know is right, and being able to communicate that in a successful way where people see you as a leader, they see you as somebody they want to work with, they see you as somebody that they can lean on. They see you as somebody who communicates well and they want to emulate. So all of my leaders are highly accomplished and brilliant in their own way. And I work across all industries. So we're not talking about people who, quote, need help to do their job. We're talking about people who need that sounding board because they have nobody else to talk to, because it might take away some of that, that posturing or that exterior that they're demonstrating and they're showing to others.
That's amazing. And one of the things you said there a couple of times is that a lot of times these individuals don't lack confidence, but it seems like it's pretty common for them to lack the abilities to project that confidence or display the confidence. What do you find as some of the most common mistakes or misconceptions there that people are missing?
I think, the difference between like there's presence, right? Everybody says have executive presence. Well, what is that? Right? Well, it's the way you show up. It's how you make decisions and how you hold people accountable and how you frame certain results for senior leaders. Like you're not talking about executing. You're talking about, or executing tasks. You're really talking about, outcome focused, right? Discussions. And so it's reframing how you speak a little bit from activities to impact driven. And so I think that's probably the biggest area where we're just refocusing and rejiggering kind of the work that they're already doing, but we're showing it at that higher level. And so I think that helps them then be seen as a strategic leader, not just an executive.
Yep, that's great. What can you share with us a recent win or success story that you're proud of?
Sure. Gosh, I have a lot. Let me think. From an executive perspective, I can give you one from each if you want, but we can start with the executive. So I had a CMO person who was a chief marketing officer or was up for a chief marketing officer job. Didn't get the job, but the employer gave them 6 months to grow into it. Really knew this was the right person. And so hired me to come in, help them, basically become the CMO. Right. And so we basically worked on, performance and perception, I think were the two biggest things, right? We're talking about, again, executive ownership and presence, making sure they're talking about things in terms of outcomes and impact and not based on, what you executed that day or what you, quote, got done. Also, we talked about strategy and visibility. Where should they be visible? Where should they not? How do they coach their team and up-level their team? Because again, if they get the job, then somebody's got to take over their former job, right? And so how to give visibility to your team. How do you become visible without going, hi, look at me, because that doesn't work. And then also just developing that leadership style. And it's beyond competence. They already know that this person is competent, right? So it's how do you energize your team? How do you give them direction? How do you hold them accountable? How do you be the leader that people want to follow as opposed to just being, a leader, right? Or just being an executive. And then also there's pieces like stakeholder management and stakeholder alignment, right? How are you managing up to the CEO? Right? So this is new. You're now sitting in C-suite meetings. So how are you showing up in those meetings? Are you talking just to speak? Because you want to be heard, or are you speaking and adding and advancing the conversation? So after 6 months of working together, happy to say was promoted to the CMO position, and still stays in that position today. So super exciting. Oh, and this particular person was also interested in board roles. So once we got them into the CMO position, then we were able to then advance their language further, because when you want to be on boards, it's a completely different language. You're talking about oversight versus doing. And so we were able to then help that particular person achieve a board role as well. So super exciting.
That's great. Very fascinating.
Yeah.
How it even changes at the highest level in that sense.
Yeah, it really does. And it's how they show up, then other people start to follow how they're showing up, right? Everybody elevates, the whole team elevates, because you're also teaching them how to be a leader who coaches, not just a leader who directs or leads. And a leader who coaches their team is going to be the most dynamic leader there is.
Yeah, that's great. I saw also that you have three books out that I saw. And it's pretty cool because it seems like, in a way, they can kind of lead right into each other if you look at it that way. Can you talk to us a little bit about the books that you've released?
Yeah. So the first book that came out, it was called Wanted, A New Career. That was the book I put out because I had transitioned careers so many times. I wanted to give people the framework that I used. And it's the exact framework I use with people who are completely lost and don't know what they want to do. They're just sick of their current job. They don't want to do it anymore, and they want something else, but they don't know what they want. So I put that book out. And then all of the people who were using that book kept asking me, do you have a book for college kids? So I said, all right, well, let me take that book and let me adapt it into a college version. So I wrote Wanted My First Career. And that book came out last year. So Wanted a New Career won Best Self-Help Book of, I think it was 2022. And then Wanted a New Career came out last year. And that is now being used by colleges, which is fantastic. Very exciting about that. And then now I have a brand new book coming out, Wanted a Board Career, and I co-wrote that with Naomi Kent, who has been working in the board space for a long time. And that comes out February 10th, 2026. That comes out. Very exciting. And that is, again, like I mentioned, it's about changing the language again. You cannot talk as an executive to get on a board. They will see you as an executive. You need to talk and speak the board language. And it basically takes you from beginning to end on how to get a board role. So you're right. They do kind of lead into each other if you look at the college age into mid-career and changing careers. And also, it's not just changing careers. The Wanted a New Career is also about finding your dream job. How do you find that fulfilling career? I'm really about fulfilling careers, not just jobs, because having a job is boring and it will drain you and you will hate it. But finding something fulfilling, that's what you want out of life.
So what do you think is important for people to find that fulfilling career? I'm sure a lot of people, when they hear that, are wondering.
Yeah, it's one simple thing. And I know this is going to sound way too simple, but it is. It's aligning your life with your values. Right? What is important to you? That's what your values are. What's important to you? And I know that sounds so simple. It's very hard for people to pull their own values out of themselves, but what is important to you on a daily basis and what do they mean? So if I say to you, Nathan, what's important to you? Can you give me one thing that's important to you?
Helping others.
Okay. And what does that mean to you?
Means making others, helping them become a better version of themselves and putting them in a state where they can help other people as well.
Okay. So what I heard you say was helping others is helping them be in the best place that they can be and that they can help others as well. Is that what I'm hearing you say?
Yes.
Okay. And if I say my value is also helping others, because it's absolutely a value of mine, and I say that means that I'm having an impact on their lives so that they can find fulfillment in their lives. Both of us have the value of helping others, but it means very different things. So you have to understand what the value is and what the value means. And then once you understand your values, if you align every decision you make, every move you make, everything you do in your life to your values, you will be fulfilled. I don't know if you can see it on my face, but I am gloriously, and I mean gloriously fulfilled 24/7, 365. Because I don't do anything that's not in alignment with my values. That means having to say no sometimes, right? That means making tough decisions sometimes. And don't get me wrong, my life's not perfect. I've had quite the week. My car crapped out this week and my kid broke her finger. And trust me, I've had quite the week this week. I fell during pickleball. It doesn't mean that everything's perfect. It means I do things in alignment with my values. So I'll give you a quick example. If somebody calls me and says, hey, do you want to do breakfast? And I say, yeah, let's do it. I will then swirl for the next 2 or 3 days. And this has happened to me. And I'm like, why am I so swirly over this? I want to see so-and-so for breakfast. Because my morning routine is super important to me. Super important to me. I have a very specific morning routine. It grounds me for the day. It gets me going. And I realize that breakfast will interfere with that. So I will call up that person and say, hey, do you mind if we do lunch? And they'll say, sure. And all of a sudden that swirl will disappear. So when you are conflicted, when you are angry, when you are frustrated, when you are sad, when you are anything that feels gloriously fulfilled, you are doing things that are not in alignment with your values. Period. Full stop. And until you understand what's important to you and align your life to your values, you will never feel that glorious fulfillment that I'm talking about, where every day I wake up fulfilled and at peace. And that's all you need. It's that simple.
That's great. That's a good deep insight there. And I can see you're good at asking questions. So you take your coaching very seriously. What would you say is something that people should look for if they're looking for a coach? Maybe not in the space that you're in. But how would you be able to tell a good coach who really knows what they're doing versus someone who may not be as beneficial?
Yeah, I think there are a lot of great coaches out there, and I think there's a lot of charlatans out there, right? I think number one, certified. find somebody who's at least certified with the International Coaching Federation. That's like that's table stakes, right? That somebody has gone through a program, it took me over a year and change to get my first certification. It took me another year to get team coaching certified. I'm now getting certified in ADHD coaching. These programs are over a year long. They are intense. They have a ton of requirements. Find somebody who is board certified or who is ICF certified, because at least you know they have the proper training. That's the first thing I would say. After that, I think a lot of it does this person feel good to me? Do they feel right for me? Are they hounding me to make me hire them? When I do a consultation with somebody, a free consultation, I don't hound them afterwards. I send them a follow-up email, and if they want to work with me, great. And if they don't, that's fine. I don't need to hound people to work with me. If somebody's hounding you, it's because they need business. There's a reason for that. There's a reason why they need business. So really understand, does their process, does their program align with what you're looking for? Ask tough questions. Ask, are you certified? Ask, how many clients have you worked with? Ask, give me an example. I don't provide references because my clients are all confidential, so I do not provide references. I do have some quotes on my website, so I don't actually say ask for references because you shouldn't be telling who your clients are. But definitely ask tough questions. And if you feel anything in your body, because you will feel it, everybody has intuition. Feel it in your body. Does this feel right to me? Does this not feel right to me? And if it doesn't feel right, don't talk yourself into it. That's not the right coach for you. There's enough coaches out there to pick the right coach. I'm not the right coach for everybody, for sure. I'm not. So I want somebody who wants to work with me and who I feel that I can truly help. Otherwise, I will tell them I'm not the right coach for you and I will make a referral. Or sometimes people need therapy before they need coaching, and I will make a referral there as well. So you really have to go with your gut and ask a lot of questions to feel comfortable with that person.
Yeah, that's great. What would you say, looking at your coaching business, what's one thing that's driving most of your growth right now?
Yeah, so I got to be honest with you. I am very different than most coaches. I'm not looking to scale my business. My business is very healthy. I do very well in my business, but I am not looking to make millions of dollars in my business. That is not in alignment with my values. That's simply put. I would say, as far as what drives people to come to me, I do write for Harvard Business Review. I have been on CNN. I've been in Newsweek. I've been in all the major channels, shall we say. And so Business Insider and whatnot. I would say most people do come after reading an article because something resonated with them. I do a podcast. Some people listen to the podcast. It's called Work Unscripted. I do get some clients from that. But mostly, I would say most of my clients come from referrals. And I think referrals speak the most, right? Somebody had a great experience. Somebody found that they were growing, that they felt good, that they heard somebody else who needs help, and they refer me. And so I would say that's probably the biggest for me.
That's a great answer. I love that you stick close to your values, and maybe that'll give you an unconventional answer to the next question. But on the flip side, what would you say is the biggest challenge in your coaching business right now?
The biggest challenge in my coaching business, I would say for me, it really is making sure that I align to the values and say no when I know it's not the right client. I did take a client not long ago that was not the right client. And I did it because I had 2 openings in my schedule. And I thought, all right, I'll take this client. I know I can help them, but it wasn't the right client. It just wasn't. And yes, I helped them. Yes, they are employed. That's great. But it wasn't the right client for me. And it was, I found it almost painful for me, even though I gave them everything I had. And honestly, I think they got the most out of it, but it just didn't feel right to me on a daily basis. So I think that's probably the hardest thing, is telling somebody that they're not the right client for me. And it doesn't mean anything personal to them, by the way. It doesn't mean that they're not wonderful, awesome, amazing people. It's just, people that you're going to work well with and some people that just aren't going to be the right fit. And so it's important that I'm honest with them. And I think that's probably the hardest thing for me, is I hate letting people down, right?
Yep. And diving into that a little bit deeper for other coaches, they might be able to learn your perspective on this, but what's a good way for a coach out there to determine if a potential client is a good fit or not? Aside from obviously the gut feeling that you've mentioned already.
It's a really good question. I think for executives, executives specifically, I love learning when I work with executives, and I've worked with in nuclear power plants and quantum physics and entertainment and across the board, oil and gas and tech and med tech and all sorts of things. I think the first thing is the gut. Right? How does it feel talking to that client when you're doing a sample session or you're doing an initial consultation? I think that's the first thing. I think the second thing is, really seeing, do their goals align with the skills and the capabilities that you bring to the engagement? I've been on the HR side. I've been on the business side. I bring additional skills to most engagements. In 1 minute, I could be coaching them about conversation they had with their CEO. And in the next minute, I could be, redlining board documents. That's more the consultative side. I do coaching and a little bit of consultative work. So I think, what do you bring to the engagement? What skills do you bring? And are those the skills that are most needed by that particular client? Some will need a little bit more of that consultative work. Some want straight coaching. And I think there's room for both in the world. I just think you have to understand what they need.
Yeah, that's a fantastic answer. No, I know you mentioned you're not looking to scale aggressively or anything like that, but looking out a year or 2 years from now, where do you see your coaching business as being different from where you are now?
I do right now mostly executive coaching. I would say probably about 90% executive. It used to be 90% career, right? Because I started as that side hustle. Now it's about 90% executive. Maybe about 10, or I'll say 8% career and 2% team coaching. I really love the team coaching. And I would love to do more team coaching. And team coaching is really just two people who can't get along. It could be two or more. So teams, a great example would be like a boss and an employee, and the employee files a harassment complaint or a discrimination complaint, and it's unfounded or it's unsubstantiated. And now they have to go back and work together, right? Helping them unpack that, right? And be able to work together again. So I would
I'd imagine that has to be a pretty dicey situation sometimes.
Completely. And most companies don't deal with it. That's the thing that's so interesting, is usually what happens is somebody files a complaint. The boss is shocked and offended, by the way. And they're pissed. And then the employee feels, slighted and feels hurt and feels angry and feels frustrated. And so they do the investigation, and it comes out as unsubstantiated because most likely it didn't rise to a legal level. As you know, I'm a former lawyer. It didn't rise to a legal level of harassment or discrimination or whatever, toxic environment, whatever the employee's claiming. Okay. But then nobody does anything about that. They say, okay, go back to work. And this is what I was doing in my last company, a ton of work around, okay, let's get in the room. Let's unpack that. Let's have a conversation in a safe space where everybody can feel heard. And what you find out is 99.9% of the time, words unsaid, miscommunication, misunderstanding, misperception, misapprehensions, all of that. And when you unpack it in the room, for example, an employee who expected to be promoted and wasn't promoted and somebody else was, all of a sudden files a discrimination complaint. Well, the boss doesn't even know they wanted to be promoted. Didn't have a clue. Never said anything. And so when you unpack that in the room, you can then come up with at the end a plan to get this person to the place they need to be to get that promotion at some point. But you have to get to that safe space. And I love team coaching. I loved it when I was doing it inside of a corporation. I'd love to do more of it. I think companies do not realize that is probably the number one source of conflict and friction is the fact that they don't have a team coach. They don't have somebody coming in and helping people get along, right? Helping people unpack what needs to be unpacked in that safe space. And so and not just after an investigation, but that's probably the most obvious place that it's needed, but it's also needed in so many other areas where teams, I remember I team coached a team one team of product managers and another team of product managers. And in the course and they just could not work together. And in the course of the coaching, it turns out that they both had completely different expectations of what a product manager does. Completely different expectations. So both teams were complaining that the other team wasn't doing what they were supposed to be doing. But when you unpacked it and you really got down to it, you realize you could literally see the light bulbs going off in people's heads going, oh my God, wait, that's not what we do. Or that's not what we're supposed to be doing. And then everybody can have that conversation of, okay, how do we like meld what we're all supposed to be doing so that we can stop arguing over who's not doing what? Yeah,
that's great. I think even just having open communication is a really cool way to come in and help a team, because it's I'm sure oftentimes there's so much that goes unsaid and just implied, and people develop feelings about each other. And
oh yes.
It's very different from a friendship or a family. Oftentimes those things don't really get talked out.
Yeah. And what happens is, unfortunately, somebody does something and it doesn't sit well and it triggers you. And then you don't say anything. And then they do something else and it doesn't sit well and it triggers you. And then they do something else and it just builds and builds and builds. And the problem is you're already looking through what I call the green glass of muck after that very first time that they did something, right? Everything now is tainted. And so you're emotionally reasoning that everything they're doing is to sabotage you or to make your life harder or to, whatever it is they're doing, right? To quote, to you, when really it has nothing to do with you. They could be, neurodivergent and disorganized or whatever the case may be, but you start taking it very personally. And it's simply because there's a lack of curiosity, or I'm not going to ask my boss that question. Are you crazy? Right? Like, I'm not going to ask my boss why they're doing that. And so if you can just get to the bottom of it, if you can just get people to open up, like you said, open communication, you'd be surprised just how much everything is just gone. Like, it's resolved. You don't have to deal with why are they doing that? You can actually ask the question next time.
Yeah, that's great. As far as your business, shifting gears a little bit, and whether you want to take this from an industry standpoint or your personal business, how do you see technology, AI, and automation playing a role in the coaching industry?
It's funny. Somebody just sent me a link to a coaching app for somebody. Instead of paying somebody to be a coach, you can type into this app. So it's not ChatGPT. It's a separate app specifically built as a coach, like a coach AI tool. I think it's interesting, quite frankly. I think it's great for early career employees. I think it's great for mid-level employees. I don't think it's probably great for executives because you're dealing with a lot more nuance in that space. But I do think it's great for those two, for sure, especially early career. If you're not making a lot of money and you can't afford a coach, or you're afraid of hiring a cheaper coach, then I think it could be really great for that. I do question, though, you see all these people like asking ChatGPT for advice. I'm not quite sure that's the right space for it, because I don't know that it's completely coded behind the scenes as a coach, as much as something that spits out what it thinks is the right answer. And coaching is about helping somebody come up with a resonant understanding themselves versus spitting out an answer to them. So I'm not sure about all these different things. That one app, super interesting. We'll see where it goes. I think it was started by the guy who wrote, oh God, I forget his name. Now I'm going to forget. But he's, social media presence or whatever, and he worked with a coach on it. And so it's super interesting. I'll keep an eye on it. I do think there's something about connection, though. And I think a lot of my clients enjoy that one-on-one connection that they have when they work with me, and they have that rapport. And I don't know that everybody wants to just type into an automated platform, because I think for some things it's great, right? How do I have a conversation with my employee about their bad performance? Okay, great. Type that into a coaching platform. But when it comes to like nuances and difficult things that are going on in the office or managing their career, I do see some things spit out very odd, weird information that may not align with their values, may not align with who they are, because you'd have to give them your whole background for them for this AI agent to truly understand you. So I think it will definitely revolutionize coaching. I'm not sure quite yet, or when or how necessarily, and at what levels it will have an impact.
Yeah, well said. If you had to give one tip to someone out there who's just at the beginning of their coaching journey and they're just getting started, what's something that you wish you knew when you started out?
Somebody told me this not long ago, and it was such a brilliant statement. They said, pick your pond. And I was like, pick your pond. Interesting, because I have 3 ponds. I do career, executive, and team coaching, mostly executive. That's my pond. And that's the pond that I play in the most. But you have to pick your pond. What is it that you want to do? What type of coaching? Do you want to do life coaching? Do you want to do divorce coaching? Do you want to do ADHD coaching, neurodivergent coaching? Do you want to do executive coaching? Do you want to do intuitive coaching? There's people who are intuitives and oracles and those types of things, all types of coaching. Pick your pond, figure out the thing that resonates with you the most, where you can bring the most value to employees or to people rather, and pick the pond and focus on that pond. Don't keep grabbing everywhere. If you want to be a public speaker, go be a public speaker. That doesn't necessarily mean you want to be a coach. You might want to do both. That's okay. I don't choose to be a public speaker. I do it. I get asked to do it. I do a lot of keynotes, but I'm not out there seeking that business. Does that make sense? So if I get asked and it resonates with me and it's something where I think I can impart knowledge, I will do it, but that's not the pond that I swim in on a daily basis.
Yeah. So really focus in on the things that you want to focus on, whether it's I guess it's kind of a combination of finding out what you're passionate about, what you're skilled in, and where the needs are.
Yeah, and what value you can bring, right, to that type of client. Because if you want to be an executive coach, but you've never worked in a corporate environment, that might be really difficult because you might not understand the dynamics in corporate. Like I said, I've been on the HR side and I've been on the business side. I've seen it from both sides. So I could bring a unique skill that maybe somebody who's never worked in corporate wouldn't have, or maybe if they haven't worked on the HR side, or if they've only worked on the HR side and they've never worked on the business side, you may not understand the pressures, the priorities of being on the business side. So I think, pick your pond that makes the most sense for you, what you're interested in, what you're passionate about, what your values align with, and where you can bring the most impact to the person that you're going to be coaching.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that's underlying what you just said there also is regarding choosing a coach, choosing someone who's been through something that you want to achieve and already achieved it, or has experience in it, really is probably relevant when looking for the right coach too.
It is. Yeah. I mean, if you want to change careers, what coach are you going to go for? I mean, I've changed careers 3 times successfully, right? Or if you want, are you going to go to a life coach? Like, that's not the person that's going to help you change careers, right? If you are somebody who wants to get to the C-suite, you should probably choose a coach who's either been in the C-suite or somebody who coaches people in the C-suite and understands that. If you want to get on a board, you should probably choose a coach who's either been on a board. I've been on a board, by the way, or somebody who works with people who want to be on boards, which I also do. So it's, find the coach that resonates with you. If you are looking for somebody to help you figure out how to manage, being a single parent for the first time, then maybe you want to find a coach that is a single parent or has, maybe their kids in college and they've experienced every stage of that. So, find the one that resonates the most with you. Like I said, I'm not the right coach for everybody, and that's okay. And you want a coach who's going to tell you that too, if they're not the right coach. That is for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you, Marlo. You've had a lot of really great advice that you shared with us today. I guess I'll end with this. Where's the best place for our viewers to find more information about you and your programs?
Thank you for asking. It's www.marlolyonscoaching. It's Lyons coaching.com. You can also find me on Work Unscripted, which is my podcast. You can find me on all the social media handles under Marlo Lyons or Marlo Lyons Coaching. That's it.
That's great. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Nathan.
Absolutely. Thank you to our viewers. If you found this valuable, please leave us a like and subscribe, and we'll see you on another episode of Grow For It. Thank you.